Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Planetarium show. My name is Jessica. I am the director of the Planetarium, and I am working solo today. It is our first kind of week of summer break, so we've got some students that have gone home for the summer, some that are taking a little bit of time off. So it's just me tonight. But that is absolutely fine because we are here tonight to talk about the May constellations that you can see up this month. Let me go ahead and get that switched over. There we go. Now, as always, if you have any questions throughout the show, feel free to leave them down in the comments. I will be checking those if it's going to take words. I might be a little bit slower to answer questions just since I will have to be checking and doing the show all at once. But I promise that I will make sure to answer any questions that come through at some point. And for our constellation show tonight, we are using this lovely program called Stellarium. There's actually a link to it in the video description. It's completely free planetarium software that you put in your date, time, and location, and it shows you what the sky looks like. Right now, I have this set up for right now in Duluth, Minnesota, since that's where we are located. For anyone else that is not in Duluth, as long as you're in the northern hemisphere, your sky is going to look pretty similar to what I show you here today. But of course, you can always get Stellarium yourself if you want to see exactly what your sky would look like. Now, since we are in the midst of spring, days are getting longer. That does mean that right now the sun is still up. So I'm going to have to fast forward time a little bit in order to get the sun to set. We'll go a little bit faster. There we go, and we'll go to about there, about 9:45 it looks like. All right, so the sun has just set. Over in the west, we are graced with the planet Venus and the planet Mars. They will be up for another hour or two after sunset, and you will be able to see those. And I'm just going to go ahead, I'll actually let it get to about 10 so we can get the sun really set. There we go. Okay. And for our constellations, we're going to start over in the north. Now, I'm doing this for a couple of reasons. One, the constellations in the north, most of them are up all year round. So they're a really good kind of starting point because they're always going to be there. So you can kind of get your bearings by finding these constellations. But in particular, in the spring, there are a lot of constellations that you can find using the Big Dipper, which is in the north. And so that is a big reason why I always start the spring constellation tours with that. So with that, I had to zoom out just a little bit because our Big Dipper here is pretty high up in the sky. It's pretty close to directly overhead for us here in Duluth. Of course, we have the 7 stars, where we have the handle and the cup. Now, the Big Dipper itself is not a constellation, it is an asterism. That makes it a smaller grouping of stars within a larger constellation. In this case, the Big Dipper are the 7 brightest stars in the constellation of Ursa Major, or the Big Bear. So to see the bear, we're going to have to add in some other stars. We have our tail, back, ear, nose, chest, front legs, belly, and back legs. And I'll go ahead and turn those lines on there so that you can see our big bear, who is kind of upside down, at least from looking from the north. Now, of course, as you may know, since we have a big bear and a big dipper, that does also mean we have a little bear and a little dipper. To find it, we're going to use the Big Dipper to help us. We are going to go to these front 2 stars in the cup of the dipper. Those are our pointer stars, because if we connect the middle line, they point us to this star. This is Polaris, but you might know it as the North Star. And it is the end of the handle of the Little Dipper. And so we have the handle and the cup. You may notice that the Little Dipper is most of the stars are pretty faint. So if you are outside and you're trying to find it and you're struggling, that is completely normal. You have to have really, really dark skies to be able to see all 7 stars in the Little Dipper. But the Little Dipper is also our little bear. We don't have any extra stars here. The handle is again the tail, and then we have the back legs, body, front legs, and we picture like a head right about there. And so that is our little bear. So that is Ursa Major and Ursa Minor, the big bear and little bear. You may notice that they have some unusual features for a bear. Bears typically have stubby little tails. These have quite long tails. And that happened because in order to get them up into the sky, Zeus actually picked them up by their tails and flung them around into the night sky. And since they were flung by their tails got stretched out. And so that's why our bears have these long tails. Now, a couple of other constellations that we can find here in the north. If we go back to our pointer stars, and this time we follow them past Polaris all the way down to the northern horizon, we come across this W shape. This is the Greek constellation of the Queen Cassiopeia. I picture her as if she's kind of like sitting in her throne and we're getting a profile view. She's also upside down this time of year, so we'd have her head, back, upper legs, lower legs, and big long clown feet. That is our Queen Cassiopeia here. And lastly, in the north, we are going to go once again to those pointer stars. But this time, instead of going all the way to Polaris, we are going to stop at the very first star we come across, because this star is the tip of the tail of Draco the dragon. So you follow his long winding tail up to his big full belly and around to his eyes and his mouth, and he's breathing fire all over someone who we'll meet in just a little bit. And so that is Draco the dragon. We'll zoom back in a little bit. All right, so that has been our northern sky. Now I'm going to turn us around to the south-southwest to start finding our spring constellations. For the first one, as I mentioned, a lot of these constellations we find with the Big Dipper's help, and this is yet another one that we do that with. But instead of using those pointer stars, we're actually going to use the whole cup of the Big Dipper. Because if we use the cup and this star in the leg, this turns into an arrow. And if we follow that arrow, it's going to point us to this backwards question mark. This backwards question mark is Leo the lion. So we have his head and his mane. This bright star is called Regulus. It is the heart of the lion. And then his body stretches out this way as he's kind of lounging in the night sky. And then right next, let me zoom in here. There it is. Right next to Leo, there's this very faint Y shape. And that is Cancer the crab. This program draws it more like an X. I was taught it more like a Y. That is pretty common. There are several constellations that vary slightly depending on what source you're looking at. But we have little Cancer the crab here. Now, Draco the dragon, Leo the lion, and Cancer the crab, go ahead and turn these on, are all part of the story of Hercules, who I'll show you how to find in just a little bit, but I want to go ahead and tell you this story. So Hercules is half god. And by being half god, he has some special powers. In the case of Hercules, that is super strength. Now, having super strength makes him feared by a lot of people. And he doesn't like that because Hercules is actually kind of a cool dude. So in the hopes of kind of proving to people that he was actually good, he set out to complete these 12 seemingly impossible tasks. We now know them as the 12 labors of Hercules. But the idea was if he could complete these 12 tasks, he would prove that he was a good person. One of those tasks was to get a golden apple that grew on one special tree, but that tree was guarded by Draco the dragon. So we have, of course, Draco here in our sky protecting that tree. And he's there to kind of depict the battle between him and Hercules. Leo was another one of those tasks. While Leo was on Earth, he was known as the Nemea Lion because he terrorized this town called Nemea. And he was a bit of a nuisance because he has magical fur that can't be pierced. So you can't hurt him with swords or daggers or arrows or anything like that. So no one was able to stop this lion. But Hercules didn't really need weapons because he had super strength. So he was able to fight the lion and win with his super strength. But then the gods decided to put the lion up into the night sky to commemorate this great beast that he was. And then lastly, Cancer the Crab is with yet another task, although he's not the task himself. The task that Hercules had to complete was to slay the Hydra. Now, the Hydra was this great beast that had this weird power that when you chop off one of its heads, like 2 or 3 more grow back in its place. So you can imagine, really difficult to kill. And Hera wanted to make sure that Hercules failed in this task. So she sent Cancer the Crab to distract Hercules in the hopes that he would then be killed. It didn't work. Hercules didn't even really notice the crab was there and actually accidentally stepped on him and killed him in the middle of the battle. So Hera put the crab up in the sky as kind of a thank you for the sacrifice that he made in trying to help her. And of course, there are several other constellations associated with the Hercules story, including Hercules himself, who, as I said, I will show you in just a minute. But I really like the spring because we do get a lot of those up all at once, and I get to share those stories. All right. With that, we're going to turn ourselves more over to the southeast for our last batch of constellations, including Hercules himself. All right, yet again, we are going to start off with the Big Dipper. This time we're going to use the handle of the Big Dipper. Now you may notice the handle is curved or arced. So what we're going to do is we're going to follow the arc of that handle to this bright star here named Arcturus. So that's the saying. From the Big Dipper, you follow the handle and you arc to Arcturus. Now, Arcturus has another name. To the Lumi Native Americans, Arcturus is known as Coyote's Eyeball. And this is one of my favorite spring stories. So Coyote shows up in a lot of indigenous stories, and he's usually some sort of a troublemaker. He's usually up to some sort of mischief. In this particular story, Coyote had come across a group of pretty ladies that he was hoping to impress. And what better way to do that than to pluck out your eyeballs and juggle them? Yeah. So it's not working. The ladies aren't impressed, so he starts throwing his eyeballs higher and higher and higher until, unfortunately, one of them went a little bit too high and landed plop right here in the night sky. And so that is Coyote's eyeball looking down on him. I guess there's a lesson there. Don't juggle your eyeballs to impress people. But yeah, that's the Lumi tale of the star, also known as Arcturus. Now, Arcturus here is in the Greek constellation of Bootes, the bear herder. And it kind of looks like a kite. I also think it looks like an ice cream cone. And I'm going to zoom back in a little bit more here. Right here. It's supposed to be a man who is herding our 2 bears across the sky. This one you definitely have to use some imagination for to really see that. Now from here, zoom back out again, what we're going to do is we're going to star hop from Arcturus, and we're going to spike down to this bright star named Spica. So that's the full star hop. We start at the Big Dipper, you arc to Arcturus, and then you spike to Spica. Now, Spica is in the Greek constellation of Virgo the Maiden. She's a pretty big constellation. This is her body. We have one arm here that's kind of upraised, like she's waving at us. This is her other arm. I picture Spica as her hand kind of on her hip, and then her legs come down this way. And so this is Virgo the Maiden here. Now, Virgo, her name is Persephone, and she is the daughter of the goddess Demeter. Demeter is the goddess of the harvest, so she also helps to kind of control the weather so that, crops have good growing weather. And Persephone was known for being absolutely beautiful. Unfortunately for Persephone, she was so beautiful that when Hades, god of the underworld, saw her, he immediately fell in love with her and decided that she must be his queen. Now, instead of just, courting her or wooing her or whatever might be considered normal, Hades decides to plant a flower that was just so unique and beautiful that Persephone had to go over to it. And as soon as she approached the flower, the earth opened up into a giant chasm, and she fell down into the underworld where she was now trapped. Now, once her mother, Demeter, heard that this has happened, she became furious, and she stormed down to the underworld to confront Hades and get her daughter back. But they argue forever. In the time that they're arguing and Persephone is stuck there, she ends up getting hungry, and she eats a single pomegranate seed. Now, this may not seem significant, but for the Greeks, where you eat is considered your home. So by eating even just a single pomegranate seed while she was down in the underworld, she had made that her home. And of course, that was Hades' plan. So as soon as that happened, Hades was like, she ate, you're done, leave Demeter, there's nothing else you can do. But Demeter refused. And so with Zeus's intervention, Hades and Demeter come to an agreement, a compromise. Persephone is going to spend 6 months of the year up on Earth with her mother, and will spend the other 6 months of the year down in the underworld with Hades. So for the 6 months of the year that we see Persephone up in the night sky, that's when she's up on Earth with her mom. Her mom is very happy, and since she's happy, we have good, beautiful weather. And then for the 6 months of the year that Persephone is under the horizon, that's when she's down in the underworld with Hades. Demeter is, of course, upset and sad, and we have bad weather because of that. So that is the story of Persephone, and also how the Greeks explained seasonal weather patterns, which I think is really cool. All right, to finish this off, let's go find Hercules. So we're going to come back to Arcturus and Boötes. Right next to it, you'll notice this backward C. This is Corona Borealis, the northern crown. And what we're going to do to find Hercules is we're going to turn this crown into a spoon. This is one of the reasons I say Arcturus looks like an ice cream cone, because then this whole process at least kind of makes sense. We're going to find a spoon to eat our ice cream with. So in order to do that, we have to add in a couple of stars to make the handle of our spoon. And I do this because those extra stars that you add in are actually the belt of Hercules. And for me, this is the easiest way to find Hercules. Most people will tell you to look for the keystone. I'm going to be completely honest with you. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what a keystone was shaped like. So once I learned this trick, it all made sense, and I have had no problems finding Hercules since. So this is his belt. So this is his whole body here. He's upside down, so we do have his arms, and his legs, just like that. So his head would be about here. This is Draco's head. That is who Draco is breathing fire at. So remember, we're seeing the battle between Hercules and Draco as Hercules is trying to get that golden apple. And Hercules does kind of look like he's flailing about. We have decided that he's not flailing. He's actually doing an awesome ninja roll. And that is why he looks like this, because we're kind of catching him mid-battle there. All right, well that has been, let me turn our pictures back on. That has been a look at our spring sky. Over in the west, right near the horizon, we are still seeing a couple of winter constellations, but I've talked about those for several months now, so if you're interested, you can always go watch a previous video about that. But yeah, that is our spring constellations and our spring sky. Over in the east, we are starting to get a glimpse of some of our summer constellations, and those will be up pretty soon. All right, I see a question. Just curious what program you use to view the constellations. Oh, yes. So for anyone who missed that in the beginning, I use this program called Stellarium. It's free to use. I actually have a link for it in the video description. And it's essentially a free planetarium software that you put your date, time, and location, and it shows you what the sky looks like. So that's what I'm using here. I did do a couple of modifications for this show. Normally, when you turn the constellations on, everything shows up at once, and normally when you click on something, it gives you a bunch of information. I turn off those features just for a better show experience, but just so that you're aware, when you first download it, it will look slightly different, but you'll still be able to do all of these things that I've mentioned. So yeah. All right, well, let me switch back over here so I can go take a look, because sometimes not all the comments show up on my phone, so I just want to make sure that I'm not missing any. Looks like I'm not. Okay. Well, if there are any other questions, now is a good time to get those in. I'll give it a couple minutes to see if we do get any others. While we wait for that, let me show you what is coming up this week. On Friday, at the Planetarium, we're doing Adventure to the Edge of the Universe, which is exactly what it sounds like. We see as much of the universe as we can in about 30 minutes. Saturday at 2 p.m. is Cosmic Colors, and at 7 p.m. is the Hot and Energetic Universe. All three of those shows also include a tour of the night sky, similar to what we did here. And then you can always join us back here next Wednesday for our next live stream, which will be Ask an Astronomer. All right. Are there any new images or any news from the web? We do have some updates, but we're going to talk about those next week as part of the Ask an Astronomer, because we always do a like astronomy news update along with answering questions. So we'll talk about the web and the new stuff next week. All right. Well, I think I'm caught up. I don't have anyone here to chat with, and I don't want to just sit here in silence and bore you guys. So I think we will wrap it up there. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining me tonight. I hope you had a great time. We have 2 more live streams before we switch our Wednesday programs back to our in-person programs. I will give you a bit of an update on that. I have gotten all of the policies figured out for being able to stream an in-person event. All I have left to figure out is to get the audio working. So it is looking like we'll be able to stream our in-person Wednesday shows. Before I officially confirm, I want to make sure I have the audio bugs all fixed. But yes, just giving you an update on that. All right. Well, again, thank you. and have a wonderful rest of your week, everyone. Bye.